Good morning and welcome
Good.
to Moments with Melinda. My guest today is Stephen Kiernan. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Melinda. How are you?
How are you?
Glad to be with you.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me and my viewers. I believe that you were one of the few recurring guests on my show.
This is my second time. I'm thrilled.
It's your second time, and I'm so excited to have you. But because you're so prolific and so, writing such incredible books, you just have to keep coming back, my friend. This is not
Okay.
the last time. This is not the last time.
I'm
But
all in.
all right.
Deal.
So for my viewers who maybe don't know who Stephen is, and I know there's not many of you out there, let me tell you. Stephen Kiernan is the author of The Curiosity, The Hummingbird, The Baker's Secret, Universe of Two, and The Glass Chateau. His newest novel, Pollock's Last Lover, is receiving rave reviews. Now, Stephen graduated from Middlebury College, John Hopkins University, and the University of Iowa Writers Workshop. He spent more than 20 years as a journalist, winning many awards before turning to fiction writing. He has also worked nationwide on improving the end of life medical care through greater use of hospice. I know there's a lot more I could say about you, but I'm going to let you tell us about you.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
probably a lot more. Well, I'm going to talk about your music and stuff, but it's my understanding, Stephen, that you have published nearly 5 million words.
Yeah, I just can't seem to shut up. I spent I don't know, a little more than 5 years after college, excuse me, writing in the morning before going to a pretty straight business job. And it just told me that I was really that I was pretty driven to be a storyteller and to express myself through language. I can't paint. I'm not a good photographer. I'm an awkward dancer. This was my way. And so I was doing it on the side. I was getting up early in the morning, even, in my 20s when I should be raging all night. I'd get up early in the morning and write before work. It was not very good stuff, and I was growing very slowly. And then a friend of mine, one of my best pals, really earliest friends, a guy named Herb Lockwood, who was my great buddy. And when he was 27, he had a workplace accident and it killed him. And suddenly I realized like I did not have forever, and I needed to stop dreaming and get to work on it. And so January 1st of 1988, I said, that's it. My income from here on is from writing. And by golly, I've been lucky enough to get away with it till now, and I always feel like I'm getting away with something because I'm doing what I love. And a lot of years that was in newspapers, and continues to be occasionally. I'll write the odd piece for the Boston Globe, something like that. I have some magazine piece I did ideas I kick around, but but then, the problem is, like, for many years, I wrote editorials for the Burlington Free Press back when it was a newspaper. And now is a heartbreak for me. But I wrote all these editorials, 365 a year. And they were all about 750 or 1,000 words. 1,000 words is to be too long. But the thing is, there are lots of ideas you just can't render in 750 words. And those became the more interesting problems for me and questions for me. Now my books are about 100,000 words long, which puts them in the middle range. It's not, this, and it's also not this. And one that was pretty long, 135, but I'm able to explore these ideas through story. And that is a really, really, it takes every cell I have and the advice of smart people and sensitive people to make stories out of it that people will want to read.
Well, it's really hard work. It's extremely hard work to get up every day. So now you are a serial award winner, quite frankly. You have received dozens of awards for your newspaper work, most notably the George Paul Polk Award for Medical Reporting, the Scripps Howard National Journalism Award, and the Freedom of Information Award. And yet, you were one of the most understated, under-egoed, if that's even a word, people that I know. How do you do that?
Well, first of all, I don't know if I have a small ego. I think I got a pretty strong one, but
Oh,
um,
but not
I'll
to
tell you, I
not
mean,
to
a piece
me.
of it is, almost immediately after I made that decision on that January 1st. I was at the Iowa Writers Workshop, which I'm just surrounded by enormous people with just huge gifts, enormous talent. And I've been in environments of lots of writers kind of ever since. And it is not humility on my part. I swear it is accurate experience that I have a very small gift. I do have a little one, but it's a small one. What I do have is kind of the work ethic of an ox, like put the yoke on and I push. And so, how I made daily deadlines, writing editorials day after day after day after year for years, putting the yoke on every morning and it happens to be a very comfortable yoke. It happens to be a yoke I've grown to love and to depend on just to understand things. And so I put that on and I rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and and feel very fortunate because I know so many people with vastly greater gifts who are, kind of struggling through their lives. I
Well,
feel
there you go.
enormously about.
That's
Yeah.
your most understated and under-egoed. That's it right there in a nutshell. You are an extremely humble man, and I love that about you, because you're also a very great man, and certainly to
Yeah.
so many of us. Now, you were born in Newtonville, New York, and you are the
Uh,
sixth of seven siblings, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Now, so who had the greatest influence on your life choices and why?
Oh, each of them in different ways. Because one thing that we all have in common, well, I'd say a few things. One is that my parents, who did not have a ton of education, were determined that we were going to get beautifully educated, and they made that happen. You hear I got a couple of graduate degrees. I don't know anybody else who does that. Just they really said like part of how you build the infrastructure of your life is that you get all the education in the best places with the smartest peers that you possibly can. And so I look at my siblings and where they were at school and what they were doing in their schools, and they're astonishing. Another part is that we all got this work ethic, and I'm past retirement age, and so are five of my siblings, and we are all still working. And like nobody has dialed back 1 degree. And I asked my brother John about it a little bit ago, and he said, I think these Kiernans were born to work, I think some of us work like we don't know where our next meal's coming from. We just this is what we do. That is the yoke being on the ox and the ox liking it. And so at different times in life, they've had different influences on me. When I was deciding to leave the kind of comfortable, good paycheck and benefits business world to just live by my writing, some of them thought that was a really dumb idea. And they were right objectively, but it wasn't an objective decision. It was what are the compulsions I have? And if you follow your heart, you'll find dinner on the table mostly. And right now, the one who is teaching me the most, and I would say very much instructing me in my limits, is my younger sister, who is
Hmm.
now 4 years. I can't believe I'm talking about this. She's 4 years along in an early onset Alzheimer's experience, and I cannot help her.
I'm sorry, Stephen.
And boy, what an education I'm getting. It's not like a cancer where you're like, we'll try this and this and this, and we'll turn the corner and we'll try. It's just a one-way ticket. And so right now, I am frightened when I go to see her. I am frightened at my inadequacy when I call her on the phone. So she is my teacher right now. And it's really affecting the book that I'm writing right now. In fact, I do have a new one underway.
Yeah, we're going to
And
talk about that.
okay. And anyway, so
Sorry
so
about your
we go all
sister.
heavy on you, but that's the honest
Oh, no,
and,
but
and
all right. Well, I'm
our
so
gang.
sorry. It's a horrible, horrible disease, and a lot of our older friends are experiencing dementia and Alzheimer's, and
Yeah.
so I'm stand with you, my friend, in all
Thank
of
you.
this that you're going through. So you are also a gifted performer, and you play a 12-string guitar. You can be seen and heard often playing the blues with the likes of the Bob Stannards of the
Oh, I
world
love it.
and the
Yes.
Vermont Blues Society guys. So you have been playing since you were 10 years old. Talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So I don't remember this, but well, I remember this part. When I was 8 or 9 years old, 9 years old, I was walking through with my sister Casey and my mom on a trail through the Adirondacks, not far away from civilization, but just we were walking to a campsite, and my mom had been having difficulties that she hid from her kids. And during that walk, she lost the ability that trail, she lost the ability to walk. And I ran through the woods and got my dad, and it turned out she had MS. And she lived with it for 24 years, and mostly in a pretty good remission. So she had still a great full life, and we were all very fortunate with that. But uh but I guess I was anxious about it. I like my parents, for some reason, they saved the letters that the school sent home about the kind of the problem with Stephen. And I'm being like 9 years old, 10 years old. I have no recollection of it, but apparently I was really amped up. I thought I might have caused it. I thought I might have it or get it, all of this stuff. So there was a guy who was my homeroom teacher in fifth grade, a fellow named George Rapicki. And I should say my parents were both devout Catholics, and so we went to Catholic elementary school. No girls, no, 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 you temptress. Anyway, so I was just playing with my buddies, on the lunch recess, and he called Mr. Kiernan, come over here, and he brought me back, and he had me come inside. I thought I was in trouble, and I didn't know what for. And you got to imagine this now 10-year-old kid who's full of anxiety. And mom's at home getting out of bed, but not a lot. And my parents are thinking about moving to Arizona because they thought climate might be a factor, all that stuff. And he draws these charts on the blackboard and says, copy these exactly. And it's 6 lines this way and 3 or 4 lines this way. And then he puts dots on them at certain places. And I write them out. And then he comes over. I forget he had a red flare pen. Remember flare pens? That's what he used to correct our papers. And he came over, and under each of the boxes of lines, he wrote a letter: C, G, D, and E with a little M. E minor. And what he was showing me was chords on
Right.
the guitar. And he said, I want you to, the Memorial Day weekend is coming up. I want you to work on this all weekend and learn to play these. And I said, what? And he gave me his old Gibson mahogany guitar, and I toted it home because we walked to school. And I hid it under the bed. It was a secret. And I practiced and practiced, and my hands got so tired. And I came in on the Tuesday of that, and I showed him what I could do, and he showed me how to hold the guitar better so it would be easier. And then he said, I want you to practice going from one of these to all the others so you can move around faster. And showed me how to do that with his strum. And then when I came back the following week and could do it, he said, okay, now you get to play. And what it was is that at graduation, there was a mass. Again, Catholic devout school. So graduation included a mass. And usually the eighth graders and one seventh grader would play the guitar, and we would all sing these folk song hymns. Um, you know, and um, and so there I was, a fifth grader with the big kids playing these songs, and my parents didn't know anything about it. And so it's the only way that they would have approved of me playing the guitar and would have been persuadable to get me a guitar. They got me a guitar called a Blackjack. It was $24, including the case. And I played it literally till it fell apart. And that became how the anxious kid calmed down. And I would go off by myself and I would read, or I'd go off by myself and play the guitar. And I'm still doing both of them. The stuff that were my comforts when I was a 10-year-old are still taking good care of me. I've got a little spat going on with the Vermont Tax Department right now. And before I wrote my communication to them, I played guitar for a couple minutes just to get calm. It's literally like how I tick. And the lovely, lovely kind of coup de grace of this is that my elementary school asked me back to be a graduation speaker to the eighth graders, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago. And it turned out that was the year that George Rapicki was retiring. And so I got to tell this story about him in front of all these kids. And it's like life comes full circle. It was such a gift.
That is
There,
an
there's the yawn
outstanding
yawn.
story.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, music is therapeutic. There's no doubt about it. Well, thank you. So to my viewers, keep an eye open for the Vermont Blues Society because usually
Yeah.
Stephen's right there with his 12-string guitar. Now, you have been a strong advocate of end-of-life care.
Yes.
Talk to us about your views and the documentary in which you're featured. You're actually featured in a documentary.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess the first thing is to say that both of my parents died not necessarily young, but prematurely. I was 28 when my dad died, and I was 33 when my mom died. And so it's not like I was an infant, but unfortunately, it meant that they never saw me in print. And and having really approved of me choosing that career, it's too bad I didn't get that I don't know, gratification or I don't know what, but to show that I was not going to starve. Um, and um, and then I started to, I think it was just the beginning of the discussion of what at the time was called physician-assisted suicide. It was just some people were starting to agitate for what became Act 39. And so I started to investigate a little bit how we die in Vermont. In fact, back then, it was about 6,000 people a year, and about 1,000 of them die in pain,
Mm,
and about 1,500 of them die hungry, and about 1,800 of them die alone.
mm,
And these are horrible numbers. These are inexcusable numbers. And so I started to write about it with a kind of journalistic energy, and learning more about what was happening for people and where was our hospice system and did we have palliative care in our hospitals? And what I found is that we were wanting. And when I was writing about that, people would stop me and they'd say, "Let me tell you about what happened with my mother. You have to hear about my son. He had a car accident and this." And they were telling me about the deaths of their loved ones, and I felt profoundly entrusted with what they were giving me. And sometimes it was amazing. It was like, and then my grandfather had one more good day and he had a pint of beer and watched the Sox win. And it was a perfect, there were those stories, but most of them, the care was excessive, the dignity was minimal to zero, the suffering was prolonged for the doctor's satisfaction, not the patient. People were in ICU and they needed to be home. All of these things. And I began to feel that it was unjust.
mm.
And so, because I just heard so many stories. So I started working on that. And Chris Bojalian, who's not only is he a great friend of mine, he's also been a great mentor and guide. And he connected me with somebody who was an agent, and she helped me put together a proposal. And that led to a book called Last Rites. And I thought like a news guy, like this book comes out and I move on to the next thing. And it's like, no, 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 no. And I ended up working in one fashion or another, whether it was helping medical and nursing schools, or it was working with legislatures, or it was just going and talking to physicians and nurses and chaplains about how what a good death looks like, and there is such a thing. Um, and that was about 15 years I was involved in that, and we still have a long way to go. I think people learned a lot the hard way during COVID because they couldn't go see their loved ones and they knew their loved ones were dying alone and probably in untreated pain. But we're still, Vermont lags the rest of the country. We're nowhere near even average in our end of life care. And so that was kind of, I don't know, not crusade, but it was a thing I had learned a lot and felt like each time that somebody told me a story, I felt like I was given more of a responsibility ethically, like to tell that story. So that's how I got in that field.
Yeah, I read a book, and I'm trying to remember who wrote it. But I'll get back to that. Um, anyway, it was about the end of life and how in this country, most of the money that goes into supporting medical care is for care after people are 70 years old. That the majority of the money that's spent on medical care is to keep people alive after the age of 70.
Yes.
And I'll send you the book, because I'm sure you've probably seen. I can't think of it right now, but he wrote this incredible book and about that, about how we keep people alive just because medicine, it comes down to some of this, and also they want to keep people alive forever and ever and ever, and it costs a fortune and people suffer. There's major suffering that goes through that, right? Because of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't assign it to greed. I think it's more like thinking we can do this, so we will do this, rather than should we do this?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I wish I could be that kind-hearted about that, but I think the medical system knows that there's big money in keeping old people alive, and old people want to stay alive, and they're like, oh yeah, do whatever you can to keep me going, and then it's all this stuff. So I'm sort of seeing it in my own life, is that they're like, okay, you need this test and that test and this and this and this, and at the end of the day, everything is, thank heavens, fine. But thank you for
Yes,
but
please.
thank but thank you for your end of life work, and keep working on it, because it
Thank
should be
you.
6 months and you shouldn't have to take 100 pills, and you should be able to so let's keep working on that, Stephen, okay?
You bet. You bet.
We can do better. But
Room for improvement.
now
That's
I'm
right.
gonna move into this.
Okay.
Um okay, Pollock's Last Lover. I watched the Ed Harris film after I saw you at that fabulous art group, because I wanted to see more. I wanted to know more about him, and it really was tragic. I mean, I don't know how much true to form his performance was, but we're going to get into that. Um, so this book is getting rave reviews. It's set in New York City between the 1950s and early 2000s. Tell my viewers quickly about this story, and then we're going to get much deeper into this book. But just very quickly, give them an oversight of
Okay.
this book.
Yeah, some context with sort of how the art world has changed and everything. So in 2006, Sotheby's, which is a huge international art and historical documents auction house all over the world, sold a painting by Jackson Pollock for $140 million. It was the most ever paid for any object of art by a mile. And a few weeks later, an older woman came forward and said that she was his lover during the last months of his life. And though he had stopped painting for the most part, he made one last painting for her. And she'd had it for 50 years on an easel in her apartment in Greenwich Village. And she now felt very selfish about having kept it there. Now that she sees the world's appetite for this, she feels like this painting should be out in the world. It should be in every museum, every gallery. Everyone should see it. And she needs to give it to the world. And the bidding will begin at $50 million. And a young woman who is a kind of a rising star within another auction house is given that painting basically as her project. Is it real? Did he really paint it? Does she legally own it? Or does it belong to his estate, which means it would go to his widow? All these sorts of things. And you have a woman with a 1956 kind of delusional idea about how you rise in status and power culturally, and a woman in 2006 and her idea, and the former relying a lot on sex appeal and on sexual availability and on being sort of supporter of the man. And the woman in 2006 being like nights and weekends people and being really, really good at spreadsheets and being really on it, sort of and some of the ways in which womanhood and female power has changed enormously in that 50 years, and also the ways in which it has not improved at all in the workplace in particular.
Yeah.
And these two women have to work together, and boy, have they got a lot of friction. And so the story is about Pollock and his paintings, but it's really about the women. It's really about them.
It's about the women. So what inspired you to write this book? I mean, as you are not a visual artist or art historian, and you were able to be so subjective in this book. What inspired you to write it?
Well, I thought that there was kind of I thought there was almost like a fable or a morality story in Pollock's life and his decay and how it led kind of to madness and then to his premature death. He's only 44 when he died. And I was writing that book 10 or a dozen years ago, and I couldn't write it. It was so depressing. It was so dark. And it was also a kind of mystery of character I couldn't sort out. And I put it aside and I wrote The Baker's Secret,
Mhm.
and which just poured out of me. And actually, it was funny to feel like I'm cheating on my book. Infidelity to my Pollock book.
And you're such a Catholic.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's in that only that way. And so and that book was still remains my most successful. So I'm glad I made that choice. But and then I wrote The Glass Chateau, which was about guys who were rebuilding they were helping in rebuilding the cathedrals of France after World War II, and they were making the stained glass windows. And it was a way that people are healing from the war. And it's a rebuilding story, which I felt we really needed. Like we still need a
Oh
rebuilding
boy.
story.
Whew.
And but it turned out as I was learning about like who now does stained glass windows, it turned out that was the most interesting stuff was Marc Chagall, who I knew as this great painter. I didn't know that he did windows, and the windows are fantastic. So when that was done, I was talking with my editor about different ideas I had for what comes next, and she didn't really love any of them. And she said, "What about that Pollock book?" I said, I don't know, it's awfully dark. And she said, go back and take a look. And I went back and took a look, and sure enough, it was unbearably dark, and no one would want to read that. It would be like taking medicine the whole time. Except that the women were interesting, the women were fascinating, and those who inspired Pollock, and those who tried to protect him from his worst impulses, so that he would stay alive and maybe paint again, and then those who totally enabled and indulged his bad impulses, and how that destroyed him, and how that looks from the lens of now. And that was a lot of fun. And I did a lot of sitting down or just even in passing conversation with young women between the ages of about 25 and 35 and saying, like, have you ever been sexually harassed in the workplace? 100%. Have you taken it to a superior person, HR, your boss, something like that, and had nothing done? 100%. And I thought, okay, so we've made some progress and we have a long way to go. And so then I put these two women together with their different ideas about what female power is and how to use it and how to gather it and how to exercise it. And I just let them work it out for 340 pages. And had a lot of fun. We're kind of diving into the whole Pollock world.
Now so your books do focus on women heroes and women characters.
Absolutely.
They do, and you have this innate ability to touch into the feminine. And you have two sons. You're, a very masculine man. I'm assuming you maybe had more brothers than your sisters, maybe.
I did, yeah.
And so what do you find? You are in touch with the feminine side that not a lot of men are to be able to write about these women heroes and characters. Where does that come from?
Boy, well, long answer to that. So I'll just give the short version,
Okay.
which is to say, first of all, that any narrator, any major main character, is an invention. And I've had cell scientist experts, and I've had a man who was a judge in the 1850s, and I've had all kinds of people where I had to create someone vivid enough that the reader would not only buy it, but would forget that I exist, forget the title of the book, forget that they're holding this white page of black hieroglyphs on it, and instead a movie begins to happen, a dream in the imagination of the reader. And if that happens, like I cease to exist, my gender doesn't matter, any of that. And that's about building up details. And so that is a technical challenge, a craft challenge with any narrator that you have. What I think is we have had, let's say since the Iliad and the Odyssey, we've had about 5,000 years of examining different forms of male heroism. And I'm not going to say that we have examined every possibility, but if you just like tonight, after dinner, just watch three superhero movies and see how exactly the same they are in so many ways. Like just write down the scene, the big fight scene when they go to slow motion and the violins start and our hero is going to lose, and you go to the same minute in the next movie, the same minute. And not only will it be like the music sound the same, it'll be the same composer. Okay. Literally, it's like it's just right. So I don't want to say we've exhausted it, but I've had enough. And I have not gone to one of these superhero movies in a long time. I couldn't tell you anything about Star Wars anymore. Like, just go. In the meantime, we've really, I would say, only been examining female models of heroism, in the last 200 years or so. Like it's a minute. And I feel like there's rich opportunity. I mean, one of the reasons I loved writing The Baker's Secret, for example, is here's a 23-year-old woman who was an apprentice to a baker, and yet she is able, through what I would call feminine intelligence, to keep this community alive. and to actually want to keep the community. She doesn't want to fight the enemy. She wants to keep this town alive. And this person needs a light bulb, and this person needs some tobacco, and this person needs eggs. And she's got it all going all over with incredible cunning. Really hard to write her. She's way smarter than me. And so that's the last thing well, let me just finish the thought. Exploring these models of heroism that are female to me is fascinating.
Are you going to go see James Cameron's Odyssey?
Hang with me one second. Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely. I will
good.
with Crystal Jillian on the
Yes,
24th.
I'm
Yeah.
hanging with you. I'm hanging with you, baby.
Yeah. But the last thing is that it also requires me to be careful.
Yeah.
And I mean, my agent, my editor, the marketing director, the publicity people, everyone that I deal with in the professional part of this book is female, and they are not shy about letting me know if I get it wrong, and I count on them to spare me mortification because I get something so wrong. And they're gentle about it, and they're quite firm about it. And mostly, what they do is give me, instead of say you got that all wrong, they will say, try this, and it opens doors, and that's the best. I always feel like the best editing is where you're not going, no, no, you're going, oh, I know what I can do. I know what I can do, and gets the idea. So it requires me to be careful, and that's valuable when you've been writing for newspapers forever, and you're writing on deadline, and you just hope that your sentences are coherent because that's all you have time for. And now that I have time, I want something that's going to make me slow down and say, is this believable or not? Is this correct? And so that, I guess.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that because I really do wonder how you're able to capture the feminine mystique and the feminine power the way that you do. So I'm going to move into something sort of relative. This book is a bit steamy,
Yes, it is.
right?
Yes.
And just noting that your other novels have had moments of steamy, but in this novel you go full throttle. Talk to us about this.
Well, it's true. In the past, mostly I write PG books. There might be like 1 second of flash of nudity or something in the other ones, but always in service of the character. Like the little bit of sex in the Glass Chateau, for example, really what's going on is these people are revealing to one another and therefore to the reader how damaged they are by the war in this particular predilections that they have sexually. And I thought it's so intimate on their part that just a glimpse of it would go a long way. This one is about the man's lover. It's in the title. It's on the cover. This is this
Oh,
like
lover.
they were dirty people doing dirty things.
Pollock's lover, his
Yes.
last lover. There probably were many, but this is his last.
I don't know how many there were
Don't
because
know
he
how
was
many.
drinking so much, but yes,
Oh,
there were
right.
definitely some. And
This is his last.
this is his last. And there are ways in which the woman in 2006 also is his last lover. But anyway, it is, her idea of what her sexual power is. She believes that if she is his sexual servant, and their sex is awful, I think, really kind of brutal, that if she pleases him, it will enable him to get back to work, and he will have another wave of great work, great paintings, and it's their destiny together to reach like a higher artistic conscience in the world, which is utter nonsense, but this is what she's convinced herself. And meanwhile, you look at the woman in 2006, and this guy is an ardent lover, and he's generous, and he's patient with her. And probably the most erotic thing that he does, in fact, is feed her in the middle of making love. He stops and feeds her raspberry sorbet,
Oof.
because she's thirsty. I mean, it's just he's this, and she doesn't see it in front of her, and bubbles it, and bungles it, and again, I feel like it's a window deeply into her that isn't about her nakedness. It's about like her soul and what she allows herself and why she allows herself that. So, and then there's the fact that so far, with one exception, a female novelist, very prominent in Vermont, said, "I need to learn when to lower the curtain." And one other person, but basically, it's been fine. And And I usually say in my book events, like when I'm on tour, I say, just so you know, this has got some saucy bits, but I also feel like we're all grown up, so we can handle it.
No kidding. I mean, thank you for that. I've been waiting
Okay.
for this. I've been waiting for this for a long time. Seriously, I think a lot of us have, I mean, because it's also a window into you a little bit too. So thank you for that. Um, to your imagination about what that would be
Yeah.
like, because you weren't there,
Yes.
you weren't in the room, and you had to
Right.
make it up. So, um,
Yes.
so I appreciate that. Now, I talked to you a little bit about the Ed Harris film.
Yes.
Okay, and this film shows a very troubling man. Ed Harris was nominated for an Academy Award, but Harden, Marcia Gay Harden, actually won
Yes.
the
Yes.
Academy Award as his wife, which is it's. I mean, watching this movie was so difficult. But the film shows a very troubling man in Pollock. His alcoholism, fame, and complex relationships with his wife, along with his volatile temper, incredible temper, and eventual self-destruction. These are deeply rooted in his life. So, how do you see the rise of his fame and his art merging to fuel his self destruction?
A huge question. Let me first address the movie, if I could, for a minute.
Okay, yep.
Unbelievable performance by Ed Harris. Clearly like a life project that he'd wanted to do. He directed it as well. It's brilliantly done. And it is filled to the rafters with myth.
Oh, good to
Um, I'll
know.
just give the example. It perpetuates every myth about Pollock that
Good
there
to know.
was. I'll give an example. Um, he- uh, Pollock did a variety of kinds of techniques of expressing himself, mostly with an easel. He was just beginning to put it on the floor a little bit so paint wouldn't run. He went to an art exhibit, very short version of it, by a woman named Janet Sobel, and many of those paintings were made with drips, with drips, with drips. And he had not done any dripping before. And he went away from that visit, that exhibit, and 6 weeks later, he came out with a painting that was all drips, and he was immediately crowned the inventor of drips. And the greatness of drips, he never mentioned Janet Sobel. No one did. Janet, like, she was just shunned while he was the hero. And that some of the sexism of the time that I believe probably still exists now. So there's that. And what you have in this film with Ed Harris is that he's got a cigarette in his mouth and he's working on a painting, and he dips a brush in the paint can, and he just holds it out to his side and it drips on the floor. And he turns and drips some more on the floor and does some more. And then we have about a 5-minute montage of him like flinging stuff and all this stuff, and it's complete horseshit. And
Well,
by the
thank
way, I've been
you.
in his studio. There's no place where those drips happened. I've seen the floor of his studio. It's actually a beautiful thing. And so it's just to say, like, the movie was great, and it also perpetuated the
The
myths.
myth.
Yeah. So anyway, so
Thank
what
you
was
for that.
sorry, just
No,
like
no, thank you for that. Thank you for that. But so I would love it if you would read for my viewers a minute or two of your book, Stephen. Pollock,
okay,
Last Lover. Would you do that for
okay.
us? Would
I,
that be
I, I
okay?
I'd love to, and what I'd like to do, if I may, is read something from the 2006 part. Okay.
Yes.
Um, okay.
Whatever suits you.
So Gwen is the woman whose job it is to authenticate this painting. The CEO of this company is a guy named Pinkney. He's a wheeler dealer type guy. His secretary is called Harriet the Hawk, and she like runs goalie over his mouth. And there's a guy named Richards who is competing with Gwen for this job, and she doesn't get it. Okay. So I'm just going to read like a page and a quarter. Okay.
Thank you.
Um, so 4 days later, Harriet the Hawk glanced up from her screen, then did a double take. Gwen stood before her, sleeves rolled up, a folio of paper in her arms. You're up early. Gwen blew an errant hair from her face. Is he back from his trip? For all of, Harriet checked her watch, 9 minutes. I needed to speak to him since Monday. Now would be good. Harriet hesitated. I'll ask, but first you might sit a minute to cool off. You look like a freight train that lost its brakes. I do? She stamped one foot. Perfect. Henriette started to speak, then caught herself and rose from behind the desk. I'm going to walk slowly, giving you time to consider what will work for getting what you want. Sometimes it's vinegar, but in Pinkney's office, sugar is often more persuasive. Gwen lowered her gaze. Thank you. Harriet gave her a long look. All right. walking slowly now, but she was back in seconds. He'll see you, but he has a call in 5. Thank you, Gwen nodded. I'm going to start easy. At least start. Hello, hello, Pinckney cried as she entered his office. I've barely taken my coat off, and here you are. You asked me to keep you current, sir. Sure did. He slapped his hands on the desk. What's the news? Are we all set? A two-part update, sir. Both items are quick. He fanned his hands at her. Go, go. The foundation has rejected all overtures to approve the painting. So it's ours to sell if we choose? Well, they also rejected the idea of waiving any future claim of ownership. Pinckney rapped his knuckles on the desk. Bunch of weenies. The second thing, Richards has been going through my desk. Some of the material is confidential or under non-disclosure agreements. It's an invasion of my privacy and a potential lawsuit for this firm if he acts on anything he's read. I told you already. Pinckney begins stirring through the stack of papers in front of him, opening a folder. It's time for you to toughen up. Toughen up. You did. But with Richards, I'm already tough. It's someone else I need to be tough with. I don't follow. You. This is your job. She walked up to his desk, putting one finger on it. It is your responsibility to run a business that obeys the law. I ought to fire you right now for subordination.
Ooh.
Oh, please do. Gwen straightened. Except you'll miss the deadline for this painting, so you'll lose the deal of the year. And you'll be writing a fat settlement check when I sue this place for sexual harassment and wrongful termination. He sat back, unraveled, hands clasped behind his head. Is that so? I'll also contact every business reporter in America to tell my side of the story while the firm's lawyer firmly instructs you not to tell yours. Every decent art magazine, too, so your credibility is shot. I will not stop until I bring this place to its knees while banking enough of your money that I never have to work again, and I'll do it for sport. Is that tough enough for you? Her hands trembling, she hid them behind the folio. Pinckney's face had gone blank. Don't speak, Gwen told herself. Don't say another word. He smiled, wide and warm. Damn, he said. I had no idea. Not one word. Keep it up like this, he continued. And next year, you'll be a managing director. And the year after that, I'll have your job. Let's not push it, shall we? The point is, you have a point. Harriet, he called through the open office door. She charged into the room, beaming and bright. Gwen knew instantly that she had eavesdropped. Sir? Richard's in my office before close of business today. Ignore his schedule. Yes, sir. She gave Gwen eye contact on her way past, a slice of a fraction of a second, but Gwen knew she had a new ally. Thank you, sir, Gwen said. May I get back to work now? I wish you would, he chuckled, and leave me the hell alone. There you go.
Man.
That's one of the moments in that workplace. Except today she'd probably get fired.
To, I don't know.
I don't know either.
I
Actually, I
don't
haven't
know.
worked in an office in 25 years, so
I don't
I don't
know.
know.
I don't
Yeah,
know. I always spoke up for myself and I never got fired. So women speak
good
up
for
for
you.
themselves now. It
It's
was so
true.
wonderful when I asked my daughter who's almost 50, I said, have you ever been, sexually harassed or has anybody ever, manipulated you and, made you feel less of a human because of your sexuality? And she looked at me and she said, never. It's never happened to me,
Great,
mother. And I said,
great.
wow, that makes me feel really, really good.
Yeah, that's
Think
great.
there's a new generation of women who just don't put up with this crap anymore. But
I hope
anyway,
you're right.
bravo on that. I
Thanks.
loved your acting. I think somebody has to make this into a play, or I mean, come on, it would make a great, Broadway production. I mean, come on. So now I'm going to move into your fabulous PowerPoint that you brought to an art group in Charlotte a few weeks
Oh
ago,
yeah,
and it followed Pollock's paintings. The art group was enthralled with your presentation. So talk about why his artwork resonates with so many other artists. Because to some of us who you said you stood in front of one of his paintings for like a day to try to figure it out. I'm not an art aficionado, so I mean when I see his work, it's kind of like okay, but what is it about artists who just go nuts about his work? And
Well, one
people
thing
like
I'd
you,
suggest, if you can, I don't know if you ever go to New York City, but
I
starting
do all the
October,
time.
okay, so starting October 4th, the Met is doing an exhibition that is 60 paintings by Jackson Pollock and 60 paintings by his widow, Lee Krasner. They're finally being presented as peers for the first time
About
ever.
time.
Yeah, really cool, really cool.
And I
And
have that down here. I said, I understand there's going to be an event, so I'm going to get into this
okay,
with
great.
you.
Happy to talk about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, so that event was interesting for me to do that talk because I'm not an art historian, I'm not an artist, but I was before an audience of artists, and in fact, I was about 3 minutes into my talk, and somebody said, "That's completely wrong."
I
Like,
heard
oh,
that. I was like, oh
yeah,
my God.
I know. So that's good. Keep me on my toes. Um, the question is like, how did I get drawn to Pollock's painting? Let me say this. He has I have it at the front of the book. He says this. This is in a radio interview in 1951. He says, "The modern painter cannot express this age, the airplane, the atom bomb, the radio, in the old forms of the Renaissance or any other past culture. Each age finds its own technique."
Right.
And I think if we're lucky that happens, the art will be fresh and so on. There were some additional elements to it, and one of them was his own limitations. Almost all of the teaching of art and visual art started with drawing, and he could not draw. He went to the Art Students League in New York City because two of his brothers had gone there and they were doing okay as artists. They didn't pursue it their whole lives, but they were sort of role models. And so he went there as well, but he couldn't draw really very well. And so the two things were that he was emotional about like not being able to do it well. He was feeling inferior. And the second was the usual kind of procrastination that any artist does before they're able to settle themselves down into their work. And but he had both of these things so severely that the teacher, Tom Hart Benson, who's a great teacher of a generation, used to just get out the thinnest typing paper and put it on like a magazine cover, and he would literally trace it. Jackson Pollock would trace it. And and his drawings from that time are pretty rudimentary. There are not a lot around, and they're not very well produced, and so on. But if you look online, you cannot find his drawings, that kind of thing. So here's the thing: if you really want to be a painter and express ideas visually, and you can't draw, you're going to have to invent your own vocabulary.
Mm.
And he did.
Well, he took it
And
from a
that is
woman,
what's that?
but he took
Yeah,
the vocabulary from a woman who
yes.
never
But he
got any
was
credit, you know.
Yes, I know there is that. I mean, he was making some amazing paintings before he saw her stuff, but that's when he exploded.
Right.
And then it was right. And but it meant also that like put a canvas in front of you that's 8 feet wide, and you can't draw out a scale model, then how do you make this thing happen? How do you imagine it and have it fit in this space properly? All of these kinds of challenges that I think were very difficult for him, but were the only way. That was his vocabulary.
And don't you
That's
think the chaos of his mind and the chaos of his destruction and the chaos of his anger, that is transferred to the to his canvas? I mean, because it is this, there's a lot of chaos that goes on in his work. Um, that
yes.
it's not what I would call a super peaceful, well, maybe it is for some people, but there seems to be
No,
a
no,
lot
it's
of
it's really yes, it's
motion,
expressing a lot.
kind of like
Um,
a mind that's on fire, almost
but I
like
think you'd appreciate this, Melinda. I think that it also takes enormous athleticism,
absolutely.
right? It's
Yes,
very much an athletic thing. And so there's that kind of catharsis. It's like a workout.
he becomes
And
it. You know, he
and even though there's all of this wild expression, it's actually very structural. You look at mural, which is, I don't know, it's 20 feet long, a little over 20 feet long, and it really has kind of 8 cells of activity across this thing. And you can look at each one, and you can spend a day looking at them because they're all different from each other, but they all fit. And it's not like he got 7.5 and ran out of space. Some part of him knew roughly how wide they were going to be, and he just made this thing happen, and they were 8. And that to me is, yes,
extraordinary.
what came out was frenzy, but also enormous craft
Well, I'm
to
going
do
to
all in his
certainly
head.
try to do
Yeah.
a better job analyzing Pollock's work. So now I understand there is going to be an event in New York City highlighting Pollock's work, and you have been invited. I want you to talk about this event. You're invited and your role. And I want to add that this is so exciting for you and for the book this book has resonated with the art world in a way that should make you very proud. But talk about that event and how long the artwork is going to be at, I believe at the Met,
Um,
right?
yeah, it's going to be
Yeah.
at the Met, and I don't know how long it's going to be there. And
When does
I'm
it
hoping to
open?
fill October 4th.
Okay, perfect. I'll be in
And
New
then
York actually the next weekend. So I will
perfect.
definitely go and check it out. How are you involved in that?
Um, I personally am not, but the book is. The book will be
Oh,
available in the gift shop there. But that's a great thing because first of all, they have about 5 million people a year go through that museum. Secondly, they're going to be, the coffee table books that have got, that are I don't know, huge, that cost $300, and there's going to be just my modest little novel that just costs 30,
your
right? So,
incredible novel. I mean,
well, it just is.
it's gonna be there. Are you gonna
I think
be
it's a
there
way.
at the opening?
I don't know yet.
Oh, you
I don't
should
know
be.
yet,
You
but
must be.
you know,
I
uh,
just think you should be there.
I don't know, like my editor wants to go with me, and we got to figure out if we can do that. But I think I think that there's going to be a lot of appearances that I do in that area,
Okay.
and also I want to get out to Long Island where Pollock lived and do some events there because I want to be able to speak to them. Like you think you saw that presentation I did of the kind of the story of Pollock's life in 12 paintings, and I would love to present that to the people who live in the community where he lived and where the
Fantastic.
houses and his studio are now kind of a museum piece.
So
So,
do you think the painting that Ruth, who's Pollock's last lover, that she maintained, do you think it was actually, because I saw it in that presentation you did in Charlotte, and I didn't think it was very attractive, but do you think it actually is one of his? What's your opinion, my friend? What's your opinion?
oh,
Don't
I've
give
been
away the
dodging.
end of the book,
I've
but you
been
must have
dodging
an
it with
opinion.
everyone. Okay, so in reality, that painting has never been proven one way or another. They
Okay.
tried to sell it as let's see, attributed to Jackson Pollock, but they've never said by Jackson Pollock. So it's still in question. And what I believe is that uh, she was a selfish person, and sort of a self-aggrandizing person, and that she went back to New York City briefly before coming back out to Long Island. And I think that she took a small painting of his, and that then she fooled with it and did
Ah,
added things to it and painted on it. And she did once try to sell it as hers, and twice tried to sell it as Pollock's original. And I think that's what's so. And I think actually, if you look at it, it didn't really follow the margins well. And Pollock, for all his wildness, like I said, there are those 8 units. He just did. And so there are people who say yes, because this black is in the center, and I, it's an opinion because that's all anyone has at this. But I think that she added her stuff to him and thought the world would be crazy for it. And the world
she's
was
still
like,
alive?
no, she died in 2010.
Okay. So for my viewers, I highly recommend you visit Stephen's website, Stephen, Stephen, Kiernan, KIERNAN.com, and visit him on Facebook and Instagram, where you can learn more about his work. And Pollock's Last Lover is available at all local bookstores, and I encourage you to get it. Turn it on to your book clubs, share it with your neighbors. This is an incredible book. So what's next for you, Stephen? What's next?
I'm about 230 pages along in a novel called The Smell of Burning Books.
Ooh, okay.
I'm hoping to have it done, to have it out in time for the next election cycle.
Ooh. And are you talking not, you're talking in 2028? Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I need to have it done by January, March, somewhere in there. And that's going to be tight because right now it's too long. I want to cut it back. But I was covering a book banning for a little bit for the Boston Globe, and I just started to look into that world some, and I want to write about that world
Good for
and
you.
just exaggerate a little bit. We'll see.
So what words of wisdom would you give my viewers on how to understand and cope and engage in this deeply troubling historic time that we are living in?
Kindness to strangers.
Kindness to stranger.
Look, we are not a divided people. It's not so. If you look at how Americans feel about, is climate change real? Just about everyone knows it's real. Is it human caused? Just about everyone agrees. Should there be some, some limitations on who can get what firearms and under what circumstances? Everyone says yes, except a small group. There are whole industries now that are fueled by fomenting division, and it takes nothing to have a bot just interfere, get people worked up. And in the meantime, so we get this sense of people being so divided. And one of the things I've loved in seeing the interviews of people from other countries who are here for the World Cup in soccer is that they're like, no one has shot at me or yelled at me. I'm here on the beautiful beach. Like Americans are really friendly. Like we have lost sight of who we actually are. And I think just a little bit, I'm talking, let the guy make his left hand turn. I'm saying you go first in the checkout line. I'm saying little kindnesses to remind us that we are not enemies. We actually are United States, and we would profit far more as a people if we work together rather than think about the things we argue about. There, God, I can't believe I had that to say. I should have said I have no advice, but I
No,
think
well,
that's it.
I think you're right. I think it's a very difficult time,
Yes,
especially for women when our rights are being
yes,
obliterated and we're seeing what's happening to children being put in prisons and people being
yes,
shot in the streets. It's very hard for us, but at least to our neighbors, if we don't know, really what their political affiliation is, it's easier for me if I can be nice to a neighbor. But if you support, putting children in prison, I have a little issue with that or
of
anyway.
course, of
But
course, of
anyway, so
course.
before we sign off, now you wrote a manifesto in 2019
I
called
did.
Vermont to the 10th Power: How a Small State Thrives in a Time of Federal Collapse. So would this not, Stephen, be the time to move forward in earnest with your vision? And how can we all help and get involved? I mean, wouldn't this be the time to maybe get this thing off the ground?
What I realized when that, first of all, that was so much to say. I mean, I have another one I want to write like as soon as I can, but I think that that for me to do that, to scale it and to pursue it, I would need an income because writing is a full-time job plus. And and I'm involved in the Nature Conservancy on
Yeah.
that board and really means a lot to me. And I want to be, involved in other things too and having a musical life. And so literally it would have to be because it would take an organization, it would take some people, it would take
Well, maybe,
activism. And it's not to say that we can't do that, but uh
well, maybe we should talk about it. I mean, anyway,
my job, I think, is to write.
yeah.
And it's not to say like, and now I dispense of this, but like I worked in hospice for 15 years, this very narrow thing. I worked in it for 15 years. And in Vermont, we've improved like 1 percentage point.
But to my viewers, I want you to go to Stephen's website and check this out. It's on your website. I
Yeah.
mean, I think putting it out in front of, at least in front of us Vermonters again, and I think now maybe people would be more willing to engage in it. And if it means putting together an organization to do that, there are people who know how to do that. And there are people who know how to raise money. And there's
Yeah.
people who know how to make this happen. And I was such a big, strong believer of that. And I just think there's no better time in the history of our country and its history of our state. So I'm going to move to the fact that to my viewers, a heads up that Stephen will be the narrator for the film that my husband and I are creating,
Oh,
Ethan Allen's
yes.
Man in the Myth, premiering on November 7th at Main Street Landing, and you've agreed to be the narrator. And one of the things we're going to do is talk about colonization's effect on people of color, women, and the indigenous. And we are going to tie Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys to their fight for democracy and for states' rights, and bring it to current time to sort of focus a little bit on what's happening right now. So Stephen's going to be our narrator, and I thank you for that, my friend.
I'm really excited about that. Honored and really excited.
I know. And it won't take up much of your time, I promise you. But
I'm
so,
ready to
so
go.
gifted to have you. So, we're going to sign off now. But before we do that, I'm going to say a few words and you just have to sit and listen.
Okay.
I want you to know, Stephen Kiernan, that I consider you a most valued friend and a deeply gifted human being who brings all the best out of all of us. And you provide us with wisdom, the most captivating stories, gorgeous musical talent, and you have a spirit, a mind, and a heart that are most beautiful, loving, and inspiring. I look at you as pure love, and I want to thank you so much for your time today. I absolutely adore you beyond words. So thank you for your time, you beautiful human being.
Oh, big love to you, Melinda. Big love to you.
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
what you wrote on the inside of your book. You did. You wrote here and you said, to Melinda with big love. That meant a lot to me. And to all of my viewers, a big love to you. Hang in
Yeah,
there. Get out there and swim in our rivers and climb our mountains and be very grateful that we live in Vermont in this extraordinary state. And I hope to see you all again very soon. And to Stephen, have a beautiful day, my friend.
thank you. Thank you.